Have you ever felt like your life was on pause? As if everything around you kept moving, people rushing, clocks ticking, conversations flowing. But inside there was only silence, emptiness, and anxiety? It's like watching the world speed past a window while you're frozen in place. Many call it a crisis, others call it disorientation. But Jung named it something deeper, the call of the soul. And if you've been feeling that hollow ache in your chest, that quiet question that keeps you awake at night, maybe this isn't the end of your story. Maybe it's the beginning of something far greater. What if the emptiness you feel isn't a punishment, not a flaw in your character, but a doorway? What if the silence that feels unbearable is not a void, but a message waiting to be heard? Jung believed that when the heart grows restless, when old ways no longer fit, the soul begins to speak through anxiety, through dreams, through that gnawing sense that something is missing. These signals aren't accidents. They are invitations. And the fact that you are here, listening right now, is proof that your heart is ready to understand. Picture this: a crowded room where everyone rushes, voices blur, and footsteps echo. In the middle of it all, a clock on the wall has stopped. The second hand is frozen. Even though the world refuses to slow down, you stand before it, unable to match the rhythm of those around you. Outwardly, everything is in motion: jobs, routines, relationships. But inwardly, something essential has stalled. That stillness isn't meaningless. It's a symbol, a frozen clock whispering that it's time to look deeper. Isn't it strange how we spend years chasing goals, climbing ladders, collecting achievements, and yet, in quiet moments we feel hollow? Why can success feel empty? Why does love, if it's only a mask, leave us lonelier than being alone? Jung's answer is simple but radical. Because we've been taught to live as persona, not as our whole self. The persona is the mask we wear to be accepted, to fit expectations. It smiles when we are sad, agrees when we want to scream, and runs endlessly just to belong. But beneath it lies a shadow, the parts of us we bury, deny, or fear. And it's the clash between mask and shadow that creates the silence you feel. Here's the truth: the pause in your life is not a breakdown. It's a breakthrough waiting to happen. Think of a seed beneath the soil. On the surface, nothing seems to move. But beneath, it is breaking open, transforming, preparing to grow. What feels like emptiness is preparation. What feels like silence is a language deeper than words. The soul speaks when persona can no longer carry the weight of pretending. If you're feeling this tension, it means change is near. Of course, it doesn't feel that way when you're in it. It feels like failure, like weakness, like being left behind while the rest of the world moves forward. You compare yourself to others, friends who look happy, co-workers who appear confident, partners who seem certain, and wonder, what's wrong with me? But Jung would say, nothing is wrong. Something inside you is refusing to live in fragments any longer. Your soul is demanding wholeness, not survival. The question, then, is not whether you're broken. It's whether you're willing to listen. Jung believed the soul never shouts. It whispers. It pulls at your sleeve when you ignore your dreams. It tightens your chest when you betray yourself. It makes time stop when you drift too far from your true path. That stop clock in your life is not mocking you. It's not trapping you. It's asking, will you stay frozen in borrowed identities, or will you dare step into the unknown? So let me ask again, what if the silence inside you is not punishment, but a call? What if the anxiety you feel is not weakness, but the compass pointing you toward your authentic self? You may think you are stuck, but perhaps you are standing at the threshold of transformation. What Jung discovered is that this silence is not a curse. It is an invitation. The only question is, an invitation to what? We all learn early in life to wear a mask. Jung called it a persona, the version of ourselves carefully shaped to meet the expectations of family, culture, and society. The persona smiles when we're sad, agrees when we want to scream, and plays along so that we can be accepted, admired, or at least left in peace. It has a purpose. It helps us survive in a world that often demands conformity. But there's a hidden cost, because while the persona protects us, it also imprisons us. Behind every mask lies something we don't want others, or sometimes even ourselves, to see. That hidden part is what Jung named the shadow. The shadow is an evil. It's simply the collection of emotions, desires, and truths we bury because they felt unsafe, unacceptable, or inconvenient. The child who was told not to cry grows into an adult who hides tears. The teenager mocked for being different learns to silence their uniqueness. The adult who feels anger but fears rejection swallows it down until it leaks out in unexpected ways. And sooner or later, the shadow will find a way to break through the mask we built. Think about this in everyday life. Imagine a friend who is always cheerful, always laughing, always fine. You've never seen them upset. They're the life of the party, the one who never complains. But then one day, without warning, they explode in anger, slamming doors, shouting words you never thought they were capable of. It shocks you, but what really happened? Their shadow had been waiting silently behind the mask. And the moment the weight of pretending became too heavy, it forced its way out. That eruption wasn't random. It was a hidden self demanding to be acknowledged. And isn't that true for you as well? How many times have you hidden a wound behind a smile, hoping no one would notice how much it hurt? How many times have you played the role others wanted to see, only to lie awake later wondering who you really are when no one is watching? These questions cut deep because they point to a truth we often avoid. The persona may win us approval, but it costs us authenticity. And when we can't express what we need, it shows up at work when we keep saying yes until resentment builds like fire in our chest. It shows up in those nights the longer we avoid the shadow, the more it sabotages us in ways we don't understand. It shows up in relationships where you scroll endlessly, trying to fill a void you can't quite name. Every time you hide, every time you silence yourself, the shadow grows stronger, waiting for the day it breaks free. And when it does, it doesn't whisper. It crashes into your life like a storm. The truth is, the mask is never the whole story. It's a role we play, a surface identity we polish for others, but it cannot contain the fullness of who we are. Deep down, your soul knows this. That's why you feel the tension. That's why the emptiness grows louder even when everything looks fine on the outside. The persona may have kept you safe once, but safety without authenticity slowly drains a life out of you. And so, here's the question we can't escape. What happens when a mask becomes so heavy that you no longer remember who you are without it? Every day, without even realizing it, we slip into different versions of ourselves. At work, we might with the face of a reliable professional, nodding along in meetings, suppressing disagreement because we fear conflict or judgment. At home, we play another role, maybe the patient partner, the strong parent, the one who never shows how tired we really are. And online, we craft yet another identity, polished and filtered, designed to project an image of control and happiness even when we feel like we're falling apart inside. On the surface, these masks help us function, but underneath, each performance takes a toll. Because shifting from mask to mask doesn't just drain your energy, it slowly erodes your sense of who you really are. Think of how exhausting it is to constantly monitor your words, your tone, your body language, always asking, will they like me if I say this? Will they accept me if I show this? It's like carrying a heavy bag that gets heavier with every hour, until one day you realize you're not carrying it anymore. It's carrying you, and when you finally set it down, you don't even recognize yourself without it. That is the quiet danger of living only through persona. It wins approval, but it costs your inner peace. Take a simple, everyday example. Imagine someone who always says yes. At work, their boss piles on tasks, and though they want to say no, they nod and take it on. With friends, they agree to plans they don't have energy for. With family, they swallow their feelings to keep the peace. On the outside, they look agreeable, easygoing, dependable. But on the inside, anger brews, resentment festers. They smile while their chest burns with unspoken words. And then later, maybe in private, they lash out or sink into guilt and self-blame, not even understanding why they feel so torn. The truth is simple. What you bury doesn't disappear. It waits. Jung once said, what we deny in ourselves eventually confronts us. And that confrontation rarely happens on our schedule. It happens when we least expect it. Through sudden outbursts, anxiety attacks, broken relationships, or the quiet despair that comes from living a life that feels foreign to our own soul. The very things we think we've hidden away end up shaping our choices from the shadows. And the more we resist them, the stronger they become. And here lies the real trap. Because the cost of maintaining all these masks isn't just fatigue, it's disconnection. When you no longer know which version of yourself is real, the line between truth and performance blurs. You might wonder, do they love me for who I am or for the role I play? Do they even know me at all? Do I even know me? Those questions echo in the silence of night, and they sting because deep down you already know the answer. The mask has stolen too much of your life. But the greatest danger is not just the exhaustion or the confusion. The real danger is what happens when this disconnection is never resolved. Because if left unchecked, the split between the mask and the soul doesn't fade. It widens. And the wider it grows, the harder it becomes to remember who you truly are. When the disconnection goes unresolved, it doesn't stay quiet. It grows louder, heavier, until it begins to shape the very way you move through life. At first, it feels like simple fatigue, a low hum of stress you think you can shake off. But over time, it deepens into something more dangerous. Isolation creeps in. Anxiety takes root. You start avoiding people not because you dislike them, but because you're afraid they'll see through the mask, or worse, that without the mask there will be nothing left to see. And so you shrink, little by little, until you feel like a ghost walking through your own days. You look in the mirror, and the reflection stares back at you like a stranger. The eyes are yours, but the spark is gone. The smile feels forced, practiced, almost artificial. You ask yourself, who am I really? And how did I get so far from myself? It's not that you don't exist. It's that the persona has been running the show for so long that the true self feels buried, unreachable. And the longer it stays buried, the easier it is to believe it may never come back. This disconnection bleeds into the body as much as the mind. Nights stretch long and sleepless, your thoughts circling in endless loops of what-ifs and should-haves. The alarm clock rings, but your bones feel like they carry the weight of years. Even small tasks feel like climbing uphill with no strength left. You go through the motions, eat, work, talk, but everything feels muted, half alive, as though color has drained from the world. You're breathing, but not really living. Existing, but not truly present. Jung described this condition not as weakness, but as a symptom of fragmentation. When the persona and the shadow are kept apart for too long, the soul itself feels split, and a split soul cannot sustain itself without consequence. You feel it as emptiness, but in truth it's the psyche demanding wholeness. Left ignored, the split becomes despair. But despair, Jung insisted, is not the end. It's a signal that transformation is near. Imagine a boat lost at sea. No compass, no map, only endless water stretching to the horizon. At first, you row in frantic circles, desperate for direction. But eventually, exhaustion sets in and you drift. Days blur together. The stars above feel indifferent, the waves below relentless. That's what it feels like to live disconnected from your own self, a soul adrift, unanchored, uncertain where the shore might be. And yet, here is the paradox. It is in that very drifting, in that terrifying silence, that the possibility of discovery opens. Because when every false direction has failed, you finally become willing to search for the true one. This is a quiet hope Jung left us with. He believed that the emptiness, as unbearable as it feels, is not a void but a womb. It is the space where something new can begin to form. The sleepless nights, the heavy mornings, a half-life, they are not evidence that you are broken beyond repair. They are evidence that the old patterns can no longer sustain you, that the soul itself is demanding rebirth. The boat may be adrift, but it is also waiting for a new compass to appear. And so, if you felt the isolation, if you've watched yourself fade in the mirror, if you've carried the weight of living only halfway, know this. The silence you fear may be the very soil where your wholeness can grow. Because it is here, at the edge of despair, that the map begins to reveal itself. And the path forward is not the one that leads you away from the pain. It's the one that leads you home. The question is, are you ready to step onto that map? Because the journey doesn't take you where you escape. It takes you where you finally meet yourself. Jung called the path out of fragmentation the process of individuation. It is not about becoming someone new, but about uncovering who you already are beneath the masks and the shadows. Individuation means moving from a life shaped by expectation into a life guided by authenticity. It is a gradual, courageous work of uniting the pieces of yourself you once tried to deny. And though it may sound abstract, it begins in very simple, very human steps. The first step is recognition. You cannot heal what you refuse to see. Recognition means looking at your shadow without fear or shame, acknowledging the anger you hide, the sadness you mask, the longings you've silenced. It's the moment you stop pretending to be fine when your heart is breaking, the moment you admit the truth of your own wounds. Jung believed that the shadow is not an enemy but a teacher, and every time you recognize it, you reclaim a piece of yourself. The second step is integration. This is where you learn to hold both the dark and the light without rejecting either. Pain and beauty, fear and courage, silence and song, all of these belong to you. Integration does not mean erasing your flaws or pretending to be perfect. It means embracing the paradox that wholeness is built from contradiction. Your weakness can teach compassion. Your fear can teach humility. Your failures can give birth to resilience. When you stop fighting parts of yourself, they stop fighting you. The third step is conscious action. Recognition and integration open the door, but only action carries you through it. Conscious action means making choices aligned with who you are, not with who others demand you to be. It's the difference between living to impress and living to express. It's the decision to listen to your inner compass, even when it points against the current of the crowd. Conscious action transforms individuation from an idea into a lived reality. And finally, there is legacy. When you live authentically, your very presence becomes a quiet inspiration to others. You no longer need to preach or persuade. Your life itself becomes a map for those still lost at sea. A person who embraces their wholeness radiates something unmistakable: integrity, freedom, peace. This is the gift of individuation. Not only that you find yourself, but that you help others find themselves too. You might be wondering, how does this look in everyday life? It begins with micro-actions. Write down your emotions instead of burying them. Practice saying no when every part of you wants to say yes just to be liked. Pause before reacting, letting silence give you space to choose instead of to repeat old patterns. Spend a few minutes each day sitting quietly, not trying to fix anything, but simply listening to your own breath. These small practices are seeds. Over time, they grow into a new way of being, one grounded not in performance but in truth. And yet, even with a map in hand, the journey is not without danger, because along the way, subtle traps wait for you, disguised as progress but ready to pull you off course. And so the question must be asked, what are the hidden snares that threaten those who dare to walk this path? Every transformative path carries hidden traps, and individuation is no exception. These pitfalls are subtle because they often disguise themselves as progress. They can make you feel as though you've arrived when in truth, you've only stepped into another illusion. To walk this journey with wisdom, you need to recognize these dangers before they pull you off course. The first is ego inflation. This happens when the mind whispers, "You've seen the truth, now you are above others." It's the pride that grows when a glimpse of light convinces you that you've reached enlightenment. But the moment you believe you're finished, you stop growing. The ego loves to masquerade as wisdom, and nothing halts transformation faster than the illusion that you no longer need it. Jung warned that inflation is a spiritual poison, turning self-discovery into arrogance instead of humility. The second trap is isolation. Once you realize how masks and shadows shape human behavior, it can feel safer to withdraw from everyone. If I don't get close, I won't be hurt. At first, the solitude feels like strength, but soon it becomes loneliness, a prison built out of fear of connection. Growth requires relationships, mirrors that reveal what we cannot see alone. Without them, individuation collapses inward, leaving you stranded in self-absorption. The third is the savior complex. Once you taste freedom, it's tempting to think, I must rescue everyone else. You pour yourself out, trying to fix, heal, or guide others, but in doing so, you neglect your own wholeness. You cannot force another person's awakening. Jung's wisdom here is clear. The greatest gift you can offer the world is your own transformation, not the illusion of carrying theirs. The fourth is regression. Change is frightening, and when fear rises, the mind seeks comfort in old patterns. You may return to toxic relationships, overwork, numbing distractions, or habits you swore you had left behind. Regression doesn't mean you failed. It means the path is real. But if you let fear anchor you to the past, you'll never step into the future your soul is calling you toward. These four traps, ego inflation, isolation, savior complex, and regression, are the shadows that haunt even the most sincere travelers. And it's here that philosophy offers two extremes. Nietzsche spoke of the solitary man, overcoming everything alone through sheer will. Eckhart, on the other hand, saw surrender as the highest path, the letting go of control into divine presence. One demands strength, the other trust. And perhaps the truth lies not in choosing one, but in holding the balance between them. Strength without surrender hardens into pride. Surrender without strength dissolves into passivity. Together, they create the posture of a soul that walks humbly yet courageously forward. And when you learn to navigate these traps with awareness, something extraordinary happens. The masks fall away, the shadow takes its place at the table, and the fragments of your life begin to weave into a whole. This is the threshold where individuation shifts into transformation. And just beyond it lies the moment you've been waiting for. The place where you no longer merely survive, but begin to be reborn. Because when you overcome these traps, something extraordinary happens. You are reborn. The moment of rebirth rarely arrives with fireworks or a sudden blaze of clarity. More often, it comes quietly, like a seed breaking open beneath the soil. There is no applause, no spotlight. Only a subtle shift inside you, a knowing that the silence which once felt unbearable has become fertile ground. What once seemed like emptiness begins to reveal itself as space for something new to grow. And you realize the waiting, the pain, the cracks in your soul were never signs of failure. They were preparation. Picture a mirror shattered on the floor, its fragments reflecting only brokenness. For years you try to glue the pieces back into something flawless, ashamed of the cracks. But then something changes. The broken shards are not discarded. They are gathered, arranged, and lifted into light. What was once a broken mirror becomes a stained glass window, each fracture now a channel for color and radiance. The cracks have not disappeared. They have been transformed into openings where light enters and beauty shines through. That is the secret of rebirth. You are not restored to what you were. You are remade into something greater. This is the heart of Jung's insight. The mask, as polished as it seemed, was never proof of your worth. And the shadow, as frightening as it appeared, was never your enemy. Together, they have shaped you into someone whole. The persona has taught you how to survive. The shadow has taught you where you still need healing. And when you integrate them, you discover that you no longer need to hide behind performance or run from your wounds. You stand in the open, unashamed, free. The rebirth is not about becoming someone new. It is about becoming someone true. You don't have to chase endless roles or prove your value through applause. You don't have to numb the pain or bury your fear. You can let them breathe, let them belong, and find that within them lies unexpected strength. What once felt like weakness becomes the very foundation of your authenticity. What once looked like brokenness becomes the opening through which light shines. And here's the moral, simple and clear. The awakened heart turns pain into light that never fades. So if these words have stirred something in you, if you felt the seed inside beginning to press against the soil, take this as your invitation. Write in the comments, "My heart is ready." Declare it not just to me, but to yourself. And if you long to go deeper, to learn how to integrate your shadow without fear, I prepared the next video just for you. Because this journey does not end here. It begins here in the quiet courage of your heart.